What if the barriers between countries just vanished overnight? No passports, no checkpoints, just you, me, and 7 billion other people free to wander wherever we want. Sounds kinda awesome, right? No more visa applications or awkward airport interviews where you suddenly forget your own name. But wait, what happens when cities get overwhelmed with new arrivals? When housing runs out, jobs disappear, and resources stretch thinner than cheap airport coffee. Could tearing down borders actually create global chaos? This isn't just some wild plot. It's a peek into what a borderless world could actually look like. And trust me, the ripple effects go way deeper than you would expect. Stick around because by the end of this video, you might actually start seeing borders a little differently. Let's unravel this thread. Borders collapse. Sounds like something out of a movie, but it's actually a serious concept. It means getting rid of physical, political, and legal lines that separate countries, letting people move freely across the globe. Basically, imagine if every country was as easy to enter as your favorite fast food joint. Just pure open travel. The idea comes from the belief that borders hold people back, limiting jobs, education, and better living conditions just because of where they were born. In theory, removing these restrictions could unlock massive potential. In fact, some economists think it could double the world's GDP, basically turning Earth into an economic version of Black Friday sale where labor is free to move wherever it's needed. But here's the catch. While some countries could gain big, thanks to more workers and cultural exchange, others might face, well, chaos. Overcrowded cities, drained resources, and political instability could hit harder than a Monday morning after a long weekend. For instance, a hypothetical merger between the US and Mexico could boost Mexico's economy by 1% every year. Pretty sweet for Mexico. But for the US, it would be like adding a drop of water to an Olympic swimming pool. Not much of a splash. And it's not just about people. Ideas, cultures, and businesses would cross borders too. Think about how global trade already works. Nearly half of the world's population lives in open economies where goods and services flow more freely, sparking innovation and growth. But there is a flip side. Questions about sovereignty, cultural identity, and who's really in charge don't just disappear. So, while collapsing borders might sound like a global dream vacation, the reality could be complicated. Like a giant world potluck where everyone brings something cool, but someone still has to handle the cleanup. And let's be honest, nobody volunteers for that. Borders aren't just imaginary lines on a map. They are like the house rules in a giant global game. Without them, the whole system could go from organized chaos to just chaos. So why are borders such a big deal? Let's break it down. First up, security. Borders are like front door for a country. They decide who gets in and who stays out. They help keep out the not so friendly types like smugglers, traffickers, and yes, even terrorists. After 9/11, the US beefed up its border security, cutting illegal entries by over 90% in key areas. Think of it like adding a high-tech lock to your front door. You sleep a lot better knowing random strangers probably won't wander into your living room. Next, economic control. Borders manage trade, jobs, and taxes. They make sure international trade doesn't turn into an all-you-can-grab buffet. Countries collected over $200 billion last year just from regulating imports and exports. Without borders, giant economies could steamroll smaller ones like an elephant in a hamster race. Not exactly fair. And finally, cultural identities. Borders help preserve traditions, languages, and histories. France, for example, is very protective of its language, and Japan goes all out to maintain its unique culture. Without borders, cultural identities could blur faster than ink on a wet paper. It's like making soup. If you toss in every ingredient from your fridge, you might end up with something edible, but definitely not what you were going for. So, while borders can feel restrictive, They're kind of the glue that keeps nations from turning into one big unpredictable mess. Without them, well, the world might be exciting, but probably in this is a disaster kind of a way. If borders vanished overnight, the world wouldn't just change, it would flip like a pancake on turbo mode. Let's break down what would go down step by step. First, mass migration. No borders means everyone is free to move wherever they want. And let's be real, most people won't be flocking to remote desert or icy tundras. Cities like New York, Berlin, and Tokyo would be packed. Right now, nearly 800 million people say they would move permanently if they could. That's almost 10% of the world. Imagine what that would do to housing, public services, and even traffic. You think your morning commute is bad now? Try getting stuck behind a line of millions all headed for the same Starbucks. Next, economic breakdown. At first, job markets would be in total meltdown. Too many workers chasing too few jobs means wages could crash faster than you would think. When Germany welcomed over 1 million refugees in 2015, unemployment for low-skilled workers spiked. Now imagine that happening everywhere. But here's the twist. Some experts believe that after decades of chaos, open borders could level the economic playing field. Workers would fill skill gaps and countries could share resources more efficiently. The catch is, we'll have to survive the total economic disaster phase first before things might get better. Let's talk about politics and society. Governments would be overwhelmed faster than a food truck at a music festival. Imagine unstable regions becoming power vacuums where bad people can take control. Think warlords, militant groups, or worse, tech startup CEOs. And let's be honest, people aren't great at handling sudden change. Civil unrest would spread faster than internet conspiracy theories. Resource scarcity, job losses, cultural clashes. It's a recipe for global turbulence. Speaking of resources, environmental collapse. Areas rich in water, food, or minerals would get drained faster than your phone on 1%. Water scarcity already affects 1.2 billion people. Now imagine everyone competing for the same rivers, farmlands, and forests. Without borders to manage sustainability, forests would vanish, farmlands would turn to dust, and food shortages would become the global trend. Except no one's posting about it on social media because there's no Wi-Fi anymore either. In the end, a world without borders sounds like a beautiful utopia, until you realize the path there involves chaotic streets, collapsing economies, and a lot of awkward, we weren't ready for this moments. Alright, let's flip the script and imagine a world without borders, but this time we are putting on our rose-tinted glasses. No walls, no passports, no awkward customs agents judging your travel snacks. Just one big happy global family. Sounds kinda nice, right? But what would that actually look like? First up, global unity. Without borders, countries wouldn't be competitors, they'd be teammates. No more hoarding resources or playing tug-of-war over trade deals. Take climate change, for example. If every country pooled its resources and actually worked together, we might see real progress. No red tape, no political finger-pointing, just action. Save the planet could finally become more than a slogan on a reusable tote bag. Next, labor mobility. Skilled workers could go wherever they are needed the most. Picture a doctor from Ghana working in Canada, or an engineer from Brazil building bullet trains in Japan. No visas required. Economies could thrive as innovation speeds up and people could live where they would be happiest the most. Some experts even say removing migration barriers could double world's GDP. That's trillions of extra dollars. A real-world preview is the Schengen zone. Europe already has a mini trial run of this idea, the Schengen Agreement. People can travel freely across 27 countries without passports, kind of like a VIP pass to the continent. It's boosted tourism, trade, and cultural exchange, but also exposed challenges like uneven migration patterns. It's a peek into what a borderless world could be, with a few bucks to work out. And finally, social connections. Cultures would be a blend, languages would mix, and diversity would become the world's default setting. No more us versus them, it would just be us. Imagine the creativity and innovation sparked by embracing every culture and tradition equally. Art, music, food, tech, the possibilities are endless. But let's keep it real. Even in this optimistic dream, we would still face some serious challenges. Managing resources fairly, ensuring safety, and balancing equality would take massive cooperation. But hey, if humanity can rise above its differences, wouldn't the payoff be worth it? What do you think? Would a borderless world be a global utopia or just one giant international headache? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Could borders ever really collapse? It's a huge question. The answer depends on a wild mix of circumstances. Some straight out of a movie and others already creeping into reality. Let's start with climate disasters. Rising seas, droughts, wildfires, these aren't someday problems. They're happening now. Take Kiribati, a tiny Pacific nation that's literally buying land in other countries because rising sea levels might swallow it whole. Now, picture that on a global scale. If parts of the world become unlivable, millions or even billions of people could be on the move, chasing safety like it's the last seat on a lifeboat. At that point, borders might not just collapse, they could become meaningless. How do you enforce a border when people are running from floods or fighting over last drinkable water source? It's survival mode. Lines on a map won't matter when nature's erasing the map altogether. Then there's global conflict. History shows us that wars can erase borders faster than you can say peace treaty. Just look at World War II. Entire countries disappeared and millions of people were displaced. If another large-scale war ever broke out, especially involving today's superpowers, governments could fall apart real fast. No government, no borders, right? But before you picture a peaceful, borderless world, remember this. In a power vacuum, warlords and factions tend to pop up. It wouldn't be one world, one love. It's more like Game of Thrones real-life edition. On the flip side, technology. Borders are already looking a bit outdated thanks to the internet. Companies like Google, Amazon, and even tiny startups operate worldwide without needing physical offices in every country. Digital economies don't care about passport stamps, and in some ways, they're making traditional borders look kind of 1990s. So, could borders collapse? It's possible, but definitely not simple. It might take a global disaster, or maybe we're already inching towards it with climate change, wars, and tech reshaping how the world looks. What do you think? Would it take a major catastrophe to erase borders, or are they already starting to fade in this digital age? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Throughout history, borders have shaped our world, dividing nations, economies, and cultures. But what if those lines disappear? We've explored both sides: mass migration, strained resources, political chaos, but also the potential for unity, innovation, and shared prosperity. History teaches us that no border is truly permanent. Empires fall, nations dissolve, and maps get redrawn. The question isn't whether borders will change, it's how humanity will adapt when they do. So would borderless world be a utopia of limitless opportunity or chaotic struggle for survival? The answer depends on how we face these challenges, together or apart. What do you think? Will humanity rise above divisions or remain bound by borders? Let me know in the comments and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Until next time, stay curious, stay connected, and stay safe.